And when they told me the news of the lung, the blood clot on his lung, I thought God was going to take him. And I thought, well, God, I told you today, and now you're going to choose to take him. And it was more than, it was almost like giving him up then, because I just knew that he was going to die. But there was a man that God sent along that had a lot of faith, and he almost shook me and said, don't you dare say that, because he's not going to die. He's not going to die. He's going to live. And that was Thursday. On a Friday afternoon, my daughters talked me into going out to get a bite to eat. As we left the hospital that Friday afternoon, I heard a code blue from ICU. And I felt like I couldn't leave, but my daughter said, Mama, had that been Randy, you would know it. They would have let us know it. We went and ate, and I had an uneasy feeling. Mothers have ways about them. They have feelings. They know something when something's wrong with their children. And I just felt uneasy the whole time. And when we got back to the hospital, my husband met me and told me that it was Randy, that they had lost him, and that they finally had they had gotten him back. He had a respiratory arrest, and he was totally gone, but they had gotten him back. But the doctors had talked to him and told him that they were going to have to put a trach and put a tube in so that he could breathe. And they wanted us to make a decision as to whether or not we wanted to do that, or wanted just to leave it. And they gave my husband all the bad things. They said with the condition that he was in, he could just move his head at the time. That was all. He could not move any other part of his body, just his head. And he had his voice, and he had a very sharp, good mind. But they said, if we put a tube in, he won't be able to talk to you. And that would be very traumatic for him. And they told us that if he lived, that he might be able to push electric wheelchair. One day he might be able to push electric wheelchair. And gave us just a lot of bad reports of the way that he would be. And he wanted us to make a decision. It was a hard decision to make. We walked the floor and we prayed. And we both, almost at the same time, my husband and I said, he's in God's hands. He's in God's hands. And if God wants him to live and to make it, if he wants to keep him here, he will keep him here without the tube. And so we decided. We went back and told the doctor. And the doctor told us, he said, that is a very hard decision, I know, but a very, very brave decision that you just made. That he felt that it was the best decision. Well, Randy, that was Friday afternoon, and he seemed to get better. And they began to let me stay with him until midnight. I could stay with him all day until the midnight nurse came on ICU, and then she would make me go and rest some. And I was on Sunday, on Friday, Randy told me, on Saturday at least, Saturday, Randy told me that, he said, Mama, I saw Jesus. And I said, Randy, when did you see Jesus? And he said, when they turned my air off, and like I explained a while ago, he could not move anything but his head. And he said, I turned over. They turned my air off, and I turned over. And he said, Mom, I was on the back of a big, beautiful white dove. I've never felt so good in all my life. I felt wonderful. I could breathe easy. And I just felt wonderful. And he said everything around me was green and beautiful. And I felt so free, he said, and I was just flying along in the spur. I saw a body of water, and across that body of water stood Jesus. And Jesus came across that body of water, stopped the bird, and let me off. And I said, well, Randy, I said, did you want to go with Jesus, or did you want to come back? And he said, I wanted to come back because I know he has something. He told me that he has something that he wants me to do. You know, it made me happy to hear him say that, because I knew right then that he wasn't going to die, because God had told him that. God told Randy that he had something he wanted him to do, and that's why he wanted him to come back. And I knew he wasn't going to die. But on Sunday afternoon, the next day, on Sunday afternoon, I was helping him with his tray. I was feeding him Jell-O, and he coughed. And he coughed, and the heart monitor, started like that, and then it went completely straight, and his eyes just went back. And I knew he was gone. And the nurses sent me out, and it seemed like an eternity that I felt such peace. But it felt like an eternity. But I felt such peace that I almost had to pinch myself to know that it was me, because I, within myself, could not have had that much peace. But I felt a peace that passes all understanding. And my husband, about that time, he had told me he was going home. And I walked outside the ladies' restroom, and my husband walked up there, not even knowing what had happened. And he had decided not to go home, but had come back. And about the time that he walked up, the doctor came to the door to tell us that he had Randy breathing again. But he said, I don't know for how long. He said, unless a higher power takes over, Randy won't make it. But he said, they're cleaning him up, and they're getting him ready if you want to come in and spend the last few minutes with him. He was that sure that he was going to go. And my husband looked at me and he said, Betty, you sure you want to go? And I said, yes, I certainly do. I want to be there with him. And so when the doctor came and let us know that we could go back in there, we went in. And it was the very first time that Randy had not responded to me. And I kept calling him, but his eyes were still walled in the back of his head. His tongue was going from one side of his mouth to the other, just swollen. His tongue really swollen and going from one side of his mouth to his other, and then he started trying to talk. But he wasn't paying any attention to me. He did not answer me at all. He did not respond to me at all. But he kept trying to say something, and we listened, trying to understand what he was saying. And as we understood what he was saying Jesus. And as he said Jesus, the monitor began to get more regular. And the more he said Jesus, the plainer it got. And he had a talk with Jesus. My husband said, I think I'll run a tape recorder. I want to record this. And I said, no, this is a talk. This is between God and Randy. And it was as if I stood in the very presence of God that day as Randy talked. I mean, he really, I can remember some of the things he said, but I don't remember them all because they were not for me. They were for Randy.